Millions of Christians observe Lent every year. But did you know it's not even in the Bible? That's right. Nowhere in Scripture will you find a command to fast for 40 days leading up to Easter. Nowhere does Jesus or his disciples tell us to mark this season with ashes, abstaining from certain foods, or giving up pleasures to draw closer to God. So where did it come from? And if it's not in the Bible, why do so many follow it? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you may see Lent in a completely new way. Let's get straight to it. If Lent isn't in the Bible, then where did it start? The answer might surprise you. Historians trace Lent back to early church traditions, but its roots go even deeper, long before Christianity. Many ancient pagan religions observed seasonal fasts, often linked to the cycles of nature, the changing of the seasons, and even the worship of false gods. Some scholars believe that elements of Lent were influenced by these traditions and later adopted by the early church, evolving into what we see today. But here's the thing, Jesus never commanded it. The apostles never practiced it. So why has it become such a deeply ingrained tradition? Now, some might say, but fasting is biblical. Didn't Jesus fast for 40 days? Yes, he did. In Matthew chapter 4, we see Jesus fasting in the wilderness, battling temptation from Satan. But here's what's crucial. He wasn't prescribing a ritual for his followers. He wasn't laying out a religious tradition to be observed year after year. He was preparing for his ministry. His fast wasn't about earning God's favor. It wasn't about religious duty. It was about total dependence on the Father. And yet, over time, Lent became an institutionalized practice. By the 4th century, church leaders had formalized the 40-day fast, tying it to Easter. But why? Was it commanded by God? Or was it a man-made tradition meant to create religious observance? That's the key question. And here's where we have to be careful. Jesus had strong words about man-made traditions. In Mark 7:8, he says, "You leave the commandment of God and hold to the tradition of men." He was speaking to the religious leaders of his day, people who added rules and rituals that God never required. Could it be that Lent falls into that category? A tradition that, while not necessarily evil, is not divinely commanded. Something that may have started with good intentions but became a ritual that many follow blindly without questioning its origins. Now let me be clear. Fasting itself is powerful. It's biblical. It's a way to humble ourselves before God. But here's the danger. When we turn fasting into a religious obligation, when we believe that giving up chocolate or social media somehow makes us holier, we miss the point entirely. The Pharisees fasted religiously, yet Jesus rebuked them because their hearts were far from God. So what's the real issue here? It's not whether someone chooses to fast or not. It's whether they understand why they're doing it. If Lent isn't in the Bible, if it wasn't commanded by Jesus, then Christians have to ask themselves, am I doing this because I think it earns me favor with God? Or am I pursuing a real personal relationship with Him? And that's where we get to the heart of it. The Christian life isn't about religious rituals. It's about faith in Jesus Christ. Colossians 2:16-17 warns us, "Let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to a festival or a new moon or a Sabbath. These are a shadow of the things to come, but the substance belongs to Christ." The substance is Christ, not traditions, not rituals, not external displays of piety. Christ alone. So here's what I challenge you to consider. If you observe Lent, do it with understanding. Don't do it because it's expected. Don't do it because it's tradition. And certainly don't do it thinking it earns you points with God. Instead, ask yourself, how can I grow closer to Jesus, not just for 40 days, but every single day of my life? And if you don't observe Lent, don't feel guilty. You are no less of a Christian for not following a tradition that was never commanded in the first place. Instead, focus on what the Bible actually calls us to do. Seek God daily, worship Him in spirit and in truth, and live out your faith with genuine love and obedience. Here's the bottom line. Lent is not in the Bible. It's a tradition. And like any tradition, it can either be a tool that points us to Christ or a distraction that makes us feel religious while missing the heart of the gospel. The choice is yours. But now you know the truth. So what will you do with it?